Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. And today I want to talk to you about a video that was sent to me of a pastor using an AR-15 as a sermon prop.
Henry Holsters is one of our trusted holster providers at Active Self-Protection. From the Enigma Easy button to their light-bearing Ember, their ambidextrous Cypher, and their AIWB or IWB Spark and more, they make high-quality holsters for many popular firearms. Go check them out at the link in the description.
So this one's a doozy, and I have been given a link to that. I've put a link to it in the description if you want to watch the entirety of it. I'm only going to show you a snippet of it. I've watched it in its entirety. And I'm just going to say at the outset, this one reminds us of why the rules of safe firearms handling are important. This guy is a knucklehead of the highest order. And I think that your life is never wasted as long as you can be used as a bad example. And this is a bad example. Now, as far as my credentials to talk about this, so for those of you who don't know, I was a vocational pastor for 14 years. I pastored two different congregations of the evangelical tradition, one for 3.5 years, one for 10.5 years combined, overall about 14.5 years. And I have some bona fides here. I also taught preaching. I taught at the undergraduate and graduate level for 9 years and 6 years respectively. So I wasn't just a pastor. I got a master's of divinity and then a half a doctorate. And I taught students preaching. I taught undergraduates preaching for quite a while. I spotted in teaching in preaching class for graduate students as well. And so I have a significant experience here, and we could talk about this from the preaching perspective. And if I critiqued his entire sermon, that would take me a lot. Okay. Also, I wouldn't call myself an evangelical today. I'm a follower of the way of Jesus. Okay. So you hear me talk about Jesus on the big channel all the time. That is my background, my faith commitments. And so if you're just going to come into this video and rag on Christianity or tell me what a piece of crap I am to follow Jesus, that's not going to be helpful. Okay. So just shoo fluffy. Also this particular church, I've put links in the description to who they are and to the video in question. They are a non-denominational word of faith movement church. So they are a prosperity gospel and a Pentecostal church. Neither of those are my background, and I don't really like the word of faith movement at all from a theological basis. That's not what our problems are here, though. Okay, so also I'm just going to tell you, I don't have audio in these clips that I'm going to show you, not because I don't want you to have the audio. I've got the link to the original in the description to watch it with the audio if you want, but I just want to talk through it a little bit, so then that way I can kind of show you what the heck is going on in here. So I am going to share my screen with you here and then share. Hold on one second in order to get that. I am going to come over here and bring this over this away. All right, now I'm going to present my screen, a window. There we are. All right. So I am going to share this with you, and I want you to see here that what we have is a very typical congregation here, and what we see from them is what we would typically see, right? So you have the pastor coming up on stage. He's right here. And I just want to kind of share that. I want to actually move that away, so then that way it's a little bit better, a little bigger on screen for you. Okay. So what you see here, pastor, and you can see he's got a rifle slung around his neck, which is going to be interesting. The rest of the worship team up here, this is very typical evangelical. Now, what he's going to do is he has around his neck a detachable single to 2-point sling with an AR pattern pistol on that sling. It has it looks like an SB tactical brace on it. It looks like it's got a Holosun reflex sight on it and a suppressor on it. Okay, fine. Somebody gave him the cool pistol. Let's see what he does with it. He is going to tell them very early on in the service. This is literally the first few seconds. Hey, everybody, you see I got this here gun on me. Don't worry about it. It's going to be for a sermon illustration later. And then he's going to drop the magazine and say, look, the magazine is empty and the rifle has been cleared. And so don't worry, it's an unloaded gun. And that is how he introduces this. to this sermon for the next hour and 15 minutes. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things here as we get going. I'm going to back this up just a little bit. Is that you notice here, he has the sling around his neck. So this strap here should actually be back behind his back. It's a convertible sling. Okay, we'll talk about that. I don't think that's a great idea. It's an AR pattern pistol. This is an SB tactical brace. I'm going to guess it has a 10.5 or 11.5 inch barrel. It's got a suppressor on it as well. Has a magazine in it. He did show that the magazine was empty, but he did not clear the chamber at all. And therefore, again, do you know that this gun is unloaded? No, you don't. I don't. Nobody does. He's told us it is, but he hasn't showed us that it is. Also, I want to note that even if you have said, wait a minute, this gun is unloaded, that doesn't mean that you don't follow the rules of safe firearms handling. This is the number one way I know that you are not competent with a firearm, is that if you think that it's not loaded means I can do anything I want with it. Absolutely not. We always practice all the rules of safe firearms handling. At Active Self-Protection, we use a variation of the NRA's 3 rules. We use them as we articulate them because they're all 3 simple positive commands that you always follow at all times. Number 1, always keep firearms pointed in the direction of least consequence. Now, that means, number 1, you only have a gun pointed when you have it in your hands. A slung rifle is not pointed any more than a holstered gun is not pointed, unless it's a SIG P320, I guess. And so if it's on its sling and hanging on its sling, no problem. But the second you put your hands on it, now you're pointing it, and you always have to point it in the direction of least consequence. We define the direction of least consequence as the direction that would minimize property damage if the gun went off and minimizes the risk to innocent human life. And so, again, we would never point a firearm at somebody who's not an immediate risk of death or great bodily injury to us and ours. And now, if somebody is an immediate risk of death or great bodily injury to you and yours, the safest direction to point the firearm, the least consequence direction to point the firearm, is directly at them. And that is the only time that we point a firearm at a person, then when they are an imminent, immediate risk of death or great bodily injury to us and ours. Otherwise, we would never point a firearm at somebody who is not an immediate risk of death or great bodily injury, because human beings have such incredible value, worth, and dignity. We would never risk that over something stupid like pointing a gun at them. Rule number 2. We always keep our finger high and at home until we've made a conscious decision to fire. So our finger is either at work on the trigger working, or it's not just off the trigger. It's not just outside of the trigger guard. It is at home in a tactile position where it has a place to be at home if we are not actively at work. And we always keep our finger high and at home until we've made a conscious decision to fire, so we know exactly where our trigger finger is at all times. Rule number 3, we always keep firearms unloaded until they are in use. A gun that is being kept on my person for personal protection is in use and therefore should be loaded. Whether that's a concealed firearm, or even if you're openly carrying a firearm, openly carrying a rifle for that matter. But a gun that is not being used for defense, and here he said it is being used as a sermon prop, that is not in use, that is as a prop, it should not be loaded in any capacity. Certainly a gun kept in a bag or in a safe that is being stored there should be kept unloaded at all times. We also add a 4th rule that is a rule for life, that we always keep firearms secure from unauthorized access. Concealment does that very, very well. If they don't know that there's a gun there, then they can't access it. If we're openly carrying a firearm, it needs to be in a retention holster, a quality retention holster that meets the rules for a quality retention holster. That's beyond this particular issue. When we put guns away, we keep them safe from unauthorized access. We don't just leave guns strewn about. We keep them in a safe. We keep them in a residential storage container, so then that way they are secure from unauthorized access. Okay, now, has he violated any of those rules yet? No, he has not. But I don't know that the gun is not loaded, and because he hasn't shown me that. Now what we're going to see from him is bad. So let's continue to watch. Again, I just am going to go back here and let's go forward here about 30 minutes. Now, I can say this from a pastoral perspective. He's quoting from the King James Bible over here, which was a great translation in 1611, not a great translation in 2025. If you love the King James, that's fine. It's a foreign language in reality in 2025 to Americans. And it was a great, as some guy who's taken an awful lot of textual critical, actual formal education. I have a lot of formal education, like 3 semesters of formal education in textual criticism. The King James is dated, friends. We do better now. Okay. Certainly recommend a modern translation, but that's a real side issue. I want to notice a couple things. Again, you can see the SB tactical brace here. You can see, again, it's got some kind of I'm pretty sure it's a Holosun reflex optic on it, and a suppressor down here. I'm fine with that. It's got some America on the magazine. Cool. He's also staged the guy up here who is just sitting here in his camo shorts and a camo hat and a green shirt, and some tennies with a backpack. And I bet you know what's in that backpack already. Now watch what he's going to do here. He is going to walk around and he's going to say, aha, Jesus had to clear the room. Now, this is in the story in Mark chapter 5 of the little girl who died and Jesus bringing her back to life. Talitha cum, right? Little girl, I say to you, arise. And he says, Jesus has got to clear the room. And so he uses the AR. So you got to clear the room of negative influence and of the devil's work. Stupid, bad, terrible analogy. But notice what he's doing here. He turned on his cheap Chinesium light, and now he is going to point the rifle at everybody in the congregation. He's going to, and he says, now it's okay. Remember, it's unloaded and I'm not touching the trigger. So it's okay for me to point a gun at you. Hogwash. It's okay for me to point a gun at you. It is not okay for him to point a gun at anyone. Anyone in that congregation could earnestly believe that he is putting them at risk of death or great bodily injury. Now, he's not paying any attention to the rifle at all, but he does have it in hand. And now he's going to point it right at that guy and point it right at the next folks and everybody in the front few rows. It's like Oprah giving out cars. You get a gun pointed at you. You get a gun pointed at you. You get a gun pointed at you. And this is going to go on for quite some time. Again, he has the gun in hand and he's trying to use it as a sermon illustration in a terrible way. First of all, it's a complete anachronism, midrash pesher at best. If you're a preaching student, that, oh, Jesus cleared the room of the people who were, mocking him for saying that she was just sleeping. And he says, so he cleared the room like with an AR-15. He had to get the bad forces out of there. Those are not the same thing at all. Jesus isn't digging corners and looking for bad guys. Jesus said, y'all get the heck out of here. And that's a vastly, vastly different thing here. Now, again, you notice he's converted to single point, and now he's going to, oh man, he was talking about this guy who was a former special forces operator that he's like, oh, look, if you notice our guy here got the rifle out of his backpack and then fumble farted it together as, again, a secondary sermon illustration for just a second while our pastor takes his Chinesium lighted AR-15 and now they're going to clear together a little bit. I don't know what that guy on the left's background is. It looked like he had a little bit better firearms handling than the pastor did for sure. At least he's got what looks like a little bit better sling on the gun. But you notice, again, what is this pastor doing? He is just all over the place with muzzling this congregation. And I just think this is egregious misuse of a firearm. And I'm going to give you a couple of things that I want to think about. Now, if you go watch the original, it's like an hour and 15 minutes long. He's going to walk around with this gun slung like this. He's going to put the second point on the sling back on finally. He doesn't know what he's doing very well. Clearly, I think this isn't his gun, or he doesn't have very much experience with it. Then he's going to walk around with it slung in a 2-point configuration around his neck like that for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then finally, he's going to take it off and put it down on his pulpit and then finish without it, because again, it wasn't very much of an illustration. He just used it to point around and say, aha, I can point this rifle at you. And that's what he's going to do for the rest of this. And again, it was a really poor sermon illustration, quite frankly. From a preaching perspective, it missed entirely. But a couple of things for us to think about from this perspective. One, egregious misuse of firearms, egregious violation of the rules of safe firearms handling, purposeful and nonsensical misuse of firearm safety. This is as bad as in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. In closing arguments, Thomas Binger, the prosecutor, and maybe I'll ask our editor over here to put up a picture of Thomas Binger pointing a rifle at the jury, pointing Kyle Rittenhouse's rifle, the rifle he carried that night in Kenosha, Wisconsin, at the jury. And I said at the time, he should be charged with aggravated assault for that. That right there is egregious. That one of the jury could have felt like he was threatening them in that. And it was just bad. This is just bad. Pointing a gun at somebody, again, especially, he's not even showed that it's clear. And how many times he never showed that the rifle was clear, never cleared it in anybody's presence. That would not justify pointing a rifle at him. But how many people have I said, oh, trust me, I verified that it's clear. Oh, trust me, somebody else cleared it. Oh, trust me, it's clear. How many times have I seen that and then somebody press the trigger and rip a round off? Thank God he at least had the trigger discipline not to press the trigger during this event. And even so, I think that, I mean, egregious misuse, and this is never okay. And he could, in my opinion, an overzealous DA could say, hey, you put 150 people at reasonable apprehension of a risk of death or great bodily injury, and he could get charged with aggravated assault for that. Now, should he? No. I think that the right to the free expression of worship is incredibly important. You're not going to see, especially in the United States, you're not going to see a prosecutor dive into a worship service and start charging a pastor for what they do during a worship service, unless it actually did cause significant bodily harm to somebody. I value the right to free worship, right? Remember, what are all 5 of the protections of the First Amendment? If you can't name them, you got problems. You should be able to name all 5 right now. What are they? Go. And if you can't, man, it's time for a little bit of civics lesson, because they're all in the First Amendment for a reason. They're the most important: free speech, free press, free worship, free assembly, and the redress of grievances. Those 5 things are protected in the First Amendment. Those are the most important because they are first, even more important than the Second Amendment, in my opinion. Now, again, so you're not going to see them get charged because there's no way they want to get involved in stuff that's going on in a worship service. Okay. But number 2, let's talk about, what did this do? Did this accomplish what this pastor wanted? No, I don't think it did. I think that there are 2 groups of people who will be just completely lost during this. The first one is, of course, anybody who's really anti-gun. Anybody who's like, I don't like guns, is going to look at this and go, what the heck is happening here? And really see a problem. And I think for good reason, right? That they're going to be like, my God, what is this guy doing, bringing an evil black rifle into the Lord's house? And I think that's going to cause problems. So you're going to lose people in your congregation who didn't expect you to show up with an AR-15 pattern rifle. But you know who else you're going to lose? You're going to lose guys like me. You're going to lose people who know what they're doing with firearms. They're going to look at that and going to go, oh my God, Pastor, what are you doing? Get out of here with that crap. Because if one of them had walked up, grabbed that rifle and punched him in the mouth, I think it would have been entirely justified, quite frankly, legally justified, certainly morally justified, because of how badly he failed and how much risk he put people at in this particular video. Just egregiously wrong. And so either of those groups of people are not going to be focusing on his message, not going to be focusing on maybe what God says and what we should do about it. But they're going to be focused on that rifle and on his egregious misuse of that rifle. And so you've lost a significant chunk of people who are there for no good return on your investment. Because let's think about, like, what would have done the same? I mean, if he says, if his point is, oh, he's got to clear the room of evil influence, like, and so, you know, we could look at it like a soldier clearing a room of threats before he was able to do his thing. Well, why couldn't he just do that again? I'm going to back up a little bit so the sound probably isn't as good. Why couldn't he just do that with his hands without a rifle in him, you know, and say, hey, it's like a soldier with an AR-15, you know, with an M16 clearing a room like this. Could have done that exact same thing without any of the risk to people, without any of the salaciousness, without any of the problems. Or even a blue plastic rifle, if you felt like that was so important. So really what he was doing was show and tell. Really what he was doing is, look at my cool toy. And therefore, that made it about his cool toy and not about what the book says. And again, I think if you're going to preach, if you're going to open the book, then what your job is up there is to tell people what it says, what it means, and what it means for them, and not play show and tell. It's simple as that. Now, I get it. I'm the guy that if you go look on the old internet, you're going to find pictures of me from like 2015 with me with an AR-15 and a Bible in a worship hall. And I let the son take those pictures. We were there by ourselves. There wasn't anybody else. There wasn't during a worship service. And if I could go back, I'd undo that. Frankly, I would probably say no thanks to them for that particular article. It was ill-advised. And am I ashamed of it? No. Again, we didn't let them around during worship services in that particular instance. So, and I told them there, I don't run a gun church, right? So there are people here from all walks of life, and I particularly teach safe firearms handling, and also am a pastor. But yeah, so you can go find those pictures. They're, 12 years old me, so I look different, but 12 years ago me, not 12-year-old me, 12 years ago me. So yeah, I think at the same time, I think he just didn't accomplish anything that he wanted to, and it was egregiously wrong in terms of the practice of firearms handling, because he's going to miss a whole bunch of people. And I don't think he'll get in trouble for this, but I think that you and I should use this as a reminder that this is not how we do business. And I frankly, if I was in the congregation when he started pointing that rifle around, I'd have got up and left. I'd be gone in a minute. Maybe I'd email him afterwards and say, hey, man, let's sit down and have coffee because what you did was egregiously wrong. But that was it. If I was on the elder board and he did that without asking about it, I'd fire him immediately. Frankly, I would literally fire him immediately. I'd have to get up, get in front of people, take the rifle from him, dismiss him from the pulpit, and fire him immediately in front of the congregation. That would be what would happen. If I was on the elder board and he said, hey, I'm going to do this, he came to his elder board and said, I'm going to use this AR as a sermon illustration. And I said no. And the rest of them overrode me and said, this sounds cool, let's do it. I'd resign from that elder board and be gone immediately. Now, somebody's going to say to me, I know there's going to be a conservative Christian that's going to say, John, you didn't follow biblical conflict resolution here and go to him privately. I don't know this guy. I don't know him from Adam. And I'm not even in conflict with him. I don't have a conflict with him. I'm saying this was publicly posted and this is his public declaration of who he is. So it demands a public response. And that public response, not to him. I'm not telling him to do anything. I'm telling all of you, all of us who everybody who's here in the community at Active Self-Protection Extra, that this ain't it, Chief. And don't you do this. This is egregiously wrong. And we should never do something like this. This is a bad example of how to be a firearms owner and a firearms carrier. So don't do this. So is that exhorting him to better? Sure, in a roundabout way. Is that saying that what he did was sin? I don't even know if it was sin. It was just an egregious mistake and a wrong with firearm safety, but something can be wrong and not sin. Oh, gosh, I guess that's a theological question. Can I do something wrong even if I do it inadvertently that didn't actually harm anybody that I thought was okay and it's not sinful? I guess we'd call that a mistake, right? And we can make mistakes without them being sinful. But that's a theological question that we can talk about another day. So I'm not trying to get into relationship with this guy. I don't know him from Adam. And so there's that part. Don't do this, friends. This is bad. Let's do better than this, huh?